The cry in the dark jungle groaned with life. Each tree stood like a crooked giant, stretching its twisted arms high above, blocking the sky. Vines hung down like nooses. Shadows moved even when there was no wind. Strange insects clicked and chirped from hidden places. The deeper you went, the louder everything became. And in that place cold, dark, alive with danger lay a small girl. Her name was Myla. She was not human. Her skin shimmered faint blue, and her ears were long and pointed. She looked like a child made of starlight and sorrow. Her body trembled under a tangle of roots, barely able to move. Her clothes were ripped, covered in dirt and blood. Her left arm was cut badly. A small band on her wrist blinked red, a tracking signal. Faint, dying, like her. She had not cried in hours. Not because she wasn't sad. Not because she wasn't scared. She was both, more than ever before. But the jungle had rules. If you cried, it would hear. And the jungle didn't care if you were only 6 cycles old. It had monsters in it. Real ones. Nyla had fallen from the sky. She was on a research ship, the Valari Dawn, with her family and other scholars. They were peaceful explorers, not warriors. They studied stars and dust storms, not weapons. But something had gone wrong. One moment, she was looking out the window, and the next, alarms screamed. The ship shook like it was being torn in two. Fire raced through the halls. Escape pods launched in every direction. Nyla's pod didn't fly far. It crashed into the heart of this jungle, tearing through trees like paper. When she crawled out, she saw smoke, wreckage, no voices. No one came for her. That was 3 days ago. Since then, she had walked. She had crawled. She had hidden. She had bled. The band on her wrist had blinked slower with each passing hour. She didn't know what it meant anymore. No one had found her. No one had answered her signal. She was lost. A sound broke the stillness. A distant metal-on-metal screech that set every animal running. Nyla froze. She held her breath and pressed her body flat against the dirt. Whatever made that sound wasn't natural. Then came the raw. It wasn't like an animal's roar. It was deeper, sharper, like a storm engine mixed with a growl. Trees shook. Leaves fell in a wave. Somewhere nearby, birds exploded from the canopy and vanished into the clouds. Nyla turned her head slowly and saw it. It moved like thunder. Massive creature stalked between trees, its skin dark like burnt metal, its back armored in jagged plates. Its 4 legs stomped into the ground like drills. Red eyes glowed beneath a helmet-like skull. Smoke hissed from vents along its sides. It sniffed the air. And turned right toward her. Nyla's breath caught in her chest. Her body refused to move. Her legs were too weak. Her mind screamed for her to run, but she couldn't. She didn't even have the strength to cry. The beast stepped closer. Its head lowered. It saw her. And then light. A blast of orange fire shot through the trees. It hit the beast in the side, exploding in sparks. The monster roared in surprise and pain. It turned its head, confused. A second shot followed, more precise, aimed at its shoulder. The beast stumbled. Myla blinked through the smoke and saw a shape. It wasn't a creature. It was a person, a human. He stepped through the trees like he belonged there. Tall, wrapped in thick black armor that was scratched and scorched. His helmet had one glowing blue eye. Steam hissed from his shoulder pads. A heavy weapon sat in his hands, still smoking from the last shot. Nyla's heart pounded. She had never seen a human in real life. Only in digital books. They were strange creatures, so different from her people. Harsh voices, rough skin, too big, too loud. She wasn't sure they were real. But now one stood in front of her. Between her and the monster, the human fired again. The blast threw the beast back against a tree. It didn't get up. Smoke rose into the air. Silence returned to the jungle. The human turned toward Nyla. She tried to crawl backward, but pain screamed in her leg. Her arm gave out. She was helpless. If this man wanted to hurt her, he could, but he didn't. He lowered his weapon, slowly, then removed his helmet. His face was pale and dirty. His eyes were tired, but not cruel. His hair was short and dark, stuck to his forehead. He crouched low, not close, just enough to show her he saw her. He raised both hands, palms open. No weapon, no threat. He said something. She didn't understand the words, but his voice was calm, not sharp, not angry. Nyla stared at him. Her people told stories about humans, that they were wild, dangerous. But this one didn't feel dangerous. He felt like safety. He reached toward her again. She hesitated, then nodded. Just once. He picked her up gently, cradling her as if she weighed nothing. His armor felt solid, warm from the fight. She expected him to move fast, but he walked slow, careful, like she was made of glass. The jungle watched them, but nothing came close. Not with the human there. And for the first time since she crashed, Nyla felt something strange inside her chest. Hope. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know where he was taking her, but she wasn't alone anymore. And maybe, just maybe, the jungle wasn't going to win. Firelight and fear in the tree. Nyla opened her eyes slowly. She expected darkness, cold, pain, maybe another roar from the jungle, but instead there was warmth. A gentle flicker of orange light danced across the leaves above her. The air smelled like smoke, metal, and something earthy. She blinked and sat up with a gasp, her hand reaching for the broken signal band on her wrist. A cloth slid from her shoulders. It was thick, too large for her, smelling of old battles and fire. Not hers, his. She turned. The human sat just a few feet away, facing a small fire. His back was broad, armor stacked beside him, pieces resting on rocks and roots. Steam rose from a metal bowl in his hands as he cleaned them with a rag. His weapon, long and heavy, leaned against a nearby stone, always within reach. He hadn't left her. That alone made her heart beat faster, not with fear, but something else. A feeling she hadn't known in days. She wasn't alone. Her leg, once bleeding and raw, was wrapped tight in fresh bandages, clean, firm. Her arms were wiped free of mud. She touched the bandages, then looked at him. He had done this. The fire cracked. Sparks floated up toward the canopy. He turned his head, just enough to see her. His face was calm, not surprised. His eyes met hers. He raised one hand slowly. Open palm, peace. Nyla didn't move. Her body still trembled. Her stomach ached. The human reached into a pouch. He sighed and pulled out a small, flat package. He opened it and placed a square block of dry food on a flat stone near her. Then he leaned back again, silent. Nyla stared at it. She hadn't eaten since the crash. Her belly felt hollow, but fear still fought hunger inside her chest. The food smelled strange, smoky, a little sweet. It made her nose wrinkle, but her mouth watered. She crawled forward, slow and careful, eyes never leaving him. He didn't move. She took the food and bit it. The taste was dry, gritty, like something meant for soldiers, not children, but it filled her mouth with warmth. Her eyes stung. She turned her face quickly, so he wouldn't see the tears. He saw anyway, but he said nothing. No words, no judgment, only the fire spoke now. Minutes passed in quiet. Nyla finished the food and pulled the cloth tighter. Her chest rose and fell slowly. She watched the fire dance. Then she whispered, "Nyla." Her voice was small, barely louder than the fire's crackling. The human turned toward her again. She touched her chest. "Nyla." He nodded once, then tapped his own chest. "Grant," he said. His voice was deeper than her people's, rough, but not cruel. She tried saying it. Ran. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Close enough. Then something changed. The fire shifted in color. The shadows thickened. Nyla's ears twitched. A low growl echoed from deep in the trees, long and hungry. Grant heard it too. He stood up slowly, grabbing his weapon. His shoulders tensed, but he didn't panic. His steps were quiet as he moved to the edge of the camp. He scanned the trees. head turning like a machine. Nyla sat frozen. Monsters, she whispered. Grant didn't speak. His eyes were focused. He moved like a soldier who had done this before, like someone who had survived worse. Then came the smell. Sharp, oily, like something burning that should never be burned. Nyla covered her nose. One of them was near. She saw it first. It moved through the trees like a shadow made of bone. Its body was tall, thin, skin stretched tight over long limbs. Its face was blank, no mouth, no nose, just red eyes glowing through a cracked skull. Its fingers were too many, claws twitching as it stepped into the light. Grant saw it next. He didn't wait. He fired once, clean and fast. The creature screeched as the blast hit its chest, sending it crashing into the dirt. But it wasn't alone. More moved behind it. The jungle burst into chaos. 3 more creatures rushed from the trees. Nyla screamed and crawled back. Grant shouted something, firing again. The blasts lit the forest in flashes. One creature leapt onto a tree and came down from above. Grant dodged and slammed the butt of his weapon into its side. It hissed, claws scraping his armor. He fired point blank. Its body dropped with a thud. Nyla pressed her hands over her ears. She felt useless. Small. Weak. But Grant didn't stop. He moved like he'd done this 100 times, calm, focused. Each step, each shot meant something. The last creature lunged toward Nyla. She screamed. Grant was faster. He stepped between them and fired a round that tore through the creature's chest. It staggered, snarled once, and fell beside her. Silence returned. Only the fire crackled again. Nyla looked up. Grant's armor was scraped. One cut ran across his arm, leaking red. But he didn't show pain. He just looked at her and reached out. A hand again. She took it without thinking. He pulled her close, picked her up, and sat down beside the fire. This time, she didn't resist. She rested against his chest, listening to his breath, steady like the fire. She didn't know what kind of world this was. She didn't know what had happened to her people. But now she knew what Grant was. A protector, not a monster, not a machine, a human. What lurks beneath the smoky fire had burned down to glowing embers, pulsing like a tired heart. Ash floated into the air in slow spirals. The jungle had gone quiet again, but not in peace. It was the kind of silence that waited, the kind that watched. Nyla sat close to Grant now. Her head rested gently against the side of his chest plate. She didn't understand the words he spoke, but she understood the calm in his voice. He was saying something into a device on his wrist. Low, clipped words, like someone trained to speak clearly under pressure. But there was no reply, only static. He tried again. Different tone, same silence. Nyla's fingers curled around the corner of his armor. She didn't need a translator to know what that silence meant. They were alone. Grant sighed. Just a little. Then he turned off the device and looked at her. She held his gaze without flinching this time. Still no signal, he said softly. She didn't understand, but the way he spoke told her enough. She looked at the jungle, then back at him. He pointed to himself. Human. Then at her. Alien. But he tapped the spot between them. Friends. She blinked. Then nodded once. That word friends was something her people rarely used for outsiders. But this man had faced monsters to protect her. He had fed her, cleaned her wounds, and stood in front of danger without hesitation. He didn't just look like a protector, he acted like one. Grant stood and began packing what little gear he had. A few metal pouches, a small heater, an empty ration packet. He moved like he'd done this 1,000 times. Quick, efficient, focused. Nyla struggled to stand. Her legs still ached, but the bandage held. She limped toward him, holding the cloth around her shoulders like a cape. Grant looked down at her. He didn't smile, but something in his face softened. Then came a distant boom. They both froze. It wasn't close, but it was big. A dull, low explosion that rolled through the ground like a wave. Nyla looked at him, fear blooming in her chest. He pointed to the sky, then mimed something falling, his hand cutting through the air. Another crash site. Another pod. She understood instantly. He thought someone else might have survived. She nodded. They had to go, together. They moved out of the clearing. Grant led the way, weapon raised. His steps were heavy, but careful. Nyla followed close behind, ducking under branches and stepping over tangled roots. Her small feet made barely a sound, like she was made for walking in silence. But the jungle was not silent for long. They had only walked 10 minutes before Nyla smelled it, burning fuel mixed with rot. Her eyes watered. Grant stopped and scanned the area. Then she saw it. In the distance, through thick smoke and broken trees, was a wreck. Not a pod, bigger, round hole crushed into the earth, metal torn like paper. Flames flickered around the edges, and there were bodies. Not human. Not hers. Something else. Charred black armor, spiked and wet with dark blood. Long arms, weapons fused to their bodies like part of their skin. Some of them were still moving barely. Nyla gasped and grabbed Grant's arm. He had already seen it. He crouched low and studied the sight, then pointed to a shape near the center of the wreck. A large figure, alive, dragging itself through the rubble. It was one of the same species that had attacked them, but this one looked different. Its armor was cracked open, revealing pale, glowing veins underneath. Its mouth, yes, this one had a mouth, was wide and filled with sharp black teeth. It was trying to speak, but only blood came out. It reached toward them. Not in threat. In warning. Then it collapsed. Grant stepped closer, slowly. He scanned the area, gun ready, while Nyla waited at the edge of the trees. Her instincts screamed to run, but she watched. The human knelt beside the creature, not to help, to inspect. His fingers moved quickly, searching the armor. He pulled out a device, jagged, blinking, strange symbols etched into its shell. He turned it over, pressed a button. The device hummed. Nyla's skin tingled. Then it clicked, and, from somewhere deep in the jungle, far, but not far enough, came a sound that made her knees go weak. A howl, but not like before. This one was metallic and alive at the same time. Long, drawn out, full of fury. It was answered by another, and another. Grant looked back at her. No words were needed. His face was already pale. His hand motioned run. They ran. Branches tore at their skin. The ground sloped downward. Nyla's leg burned, but she kept going. She didn't stop. Grant didn't either. Behind them, the howls grew louder. Closer. Something had heard the signal. Something worse. They slid down a hill, into a narrow ravine, filled with mist. Vines hung down in walls. Grant ducked behind a fallen log and waved her in. She dove beside him, gasping, heart hammering. He placed a hand on her back, steadying her breathing. Then he looked up. The jungle above them shook. Figures moved in the mist. Tall. Hungry. They didn't see them yet. Not yet. But they would. Grant pulled something from his belt, a small cube. He pressed it, and it lit up. A red circle appeared on the ground beside them, a beacon, but not for rescue, for distraction. He tossed it far into the trees. It beeped. Flashed. Exploded in a burst of white light. The creatures shrieked and chased the noise. Silence returned. Nyla's body shook. Her hand clutched Grant's wrist. He didn't speak. Just breathed. They had survived, for now, but something worse than monsters was coming. And whatever it was, it wanted both of them. The path through Shadow's jungle never truly slept. Even in the dark, it pulsed with strange energy. Branches creaked, leaves whispered, and deep beneath the soil, something always shifted. Mist rolled through the underbrush, curling around, roots and rocks, like ghostly fingers. Nyla crouched beside Grant, both of them hidden behind a wall of moss and stone. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and wet earth. Her heart still pounded from the run, and her legs trembled, but she didn't make a sound. Neither did he. They listened. Above them, the shadows moved again. Not animals, not wild beasts, something colder, more precise. Nyla peeked through the vines. Tall figures stalked the jungle floor. Their limbs were too long, their movements too smooth. They wore armor that shimmered like oil in moonlight. Each of them had a strange blade fused to one arm, and their heads turned without sound, scanning the trees, searching, looking for her, looking for him. Nyla turned back to Grant. He was calm, but focused. His rifle sat against his shoulder, ready. He met her eyes and tapped his chest twice. Stay strong. She nodded. She didn't feel strong. But she didn't feel alone, either. They waited in silence. Then, slowly, the hunters passed. No words, no footsteps, just gone. Only when the jungle began breathing again did Grant move. He stood, offered her a hand, and pulled her up. They didn't speak as they walked, stepping carefully through thick vines and over fallen logs. Every sound felt loud. Every snap of a twig made Nyla's skin tighten. She clutched the thick cloth around her body like armor. It didn't help much, but it was something. Hours passed. The deeper they went, the more the forest changed. The trees grew closer together. Their roots tangled like webs. Pale blue mushrooms glowed near the base of trunks. The air turned cooler, damp with mist. Strange insects buzzed past Nyla's ears, bright green, with wings like glass. This part of the jungle felt older, less wild, more forgotten. Grant slowed. He raised a hand to stop. Nyla froze. Ahead of them was a clearing, but not empty. Something massive had crashed here long ago. Half buried in moss and vines was the broken shell of a human ship. Not a pod, a full drop ship. Its hull was cracked open, engines scorched black. One wing stuck into the air like a blade of rusted metal. Nyla's mouth opened slightly. She had never seen a human ship this close. Grant stepped forward slowly, brushing aside plants as he walked. His eyes scanned the wreck like he was remembering something, like he had been here before. Maybe he had. Inside the ship, the floor was tilted and covered in dirt and ash. Crates were broken, their contents scattered and useless. A thick vine wrapped around the remains of a cockpit chair. Grant stopped at one corner and pulled open a metal locker. Inside, he found 2 small cylinders and a folded emergency pack. He checked the gear, then handed one of the cylinders to Nyla. It was warm to the touch. A small light blinked on its side. She looked up at him. He mimed holding it close to her chest. She obeyed. Within seconds, she felt heat spread through her core, not burning, just gentle warmth. The ache in her leg faded a little, the stiffness in her fingers loosened. She let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. He activated the second one and clipped it to his belt. They sat inside the ruined ship for a while. The wind whispered outside. The jungle stayed quiet. Then, Grant opened a small metal box and pulled out a thin black disc. He tapped it. A blue light projected into the air, a hologram. Nyla leaned in. It showed a map. Faint, cracked, full of missing data. But there was one blinking dot far to the west. He pointed to it. Then pointed to the jungle around them. She understood. It was an extraction point. Maybe an outpost. Maybe rescue. It was far. She nodded. They would go. Grant tapped the hologram again. This time, it changed. A new image appeared. Not exactly, just a small, grainy image of an alien child, marked Xeno priority, live sample. Lines of unreadable code scrolled beneath the photo. Next to it was a second image, an adult version of her species, labeled terminated. Nyla stared at it. Her hands went cold, even with the warmth of the cylinder. She looked up at Grant. His face was still hard. He didn't need to say anything. The message was clear. Someone wanted her, not to save. To take. Or study. Or worse. She stepped back, panic rising, but Grant held up both hands again, palms open. Then he did something she didn't expect. He pulled out a thin blade and turned it backward, slowly, without a word. He held it out to her handle first. A weapon, a gift, a promise. He was not her captor, not her enemy. She took the blade. Her hands trembled, but she held it. The weight made her feel heavier, not with fear, with purpose. Grant nodded. Then packed up the last of the gear. Outside, the sky was turning pale. Morning was coming. The jungle was still dark, but the first hints of light painted the mist in silver. Grant and Nyla stepped out of the wreckage and into the unknown. The path ahead was long, but she no longer walked behind him. Now she walked beside him. Whatever waited out there, whoever wanted her would find that she was not easy prey, not anymore, and she wasn't alone. Echoes of the fallen sky, the sun, truly rose in this jungle. Light filtered through the canopy in thin lines, like pale fingers reaching from a dying sky. The trees loomed tall and ancient, their trunks wrapped in vines thicker than Nyla's arm. The air buzzed with life, some too small to see, some too big to understand. She walked beside Grant now. Her legs still hurt, but she didn't limp anymore. The warmth from the human tech had numbed the worst of it, and her body had begun to adapt. The pain became background noise, just like the hunger, the fear, and the memory of screams during the crash. What mattered now was the path forward. Grant kept his rifle close, scanning constantly. He never moved fast, never too slow, just steady, measured. He walked like someone used to being hunted and someone even more used to surviving it. Nyla watched him carefully. Every step he took taught her something. He wasn't just a protector, he was a soldier, and he'd been doing this far longer than she had been alive. They stopped once when they reached a ridge. Below them, the jungle stretched for miles, green, thick, endless. But far off in the distance, where the trees broke into a clearing, there was something else. A tower, not a building. A spire, metal, black, too perfect to be natural. It pulsed, with faint red lights along its side. Around it, the ground was scorched in a wide circle, like something massive had landed or burned its way through. Nyla stared in awe. Grant zoomed in with a small lens on his helmet. His face stayed hard, jaw clenched. He showed her the lens feed. At the base of the tower moved things. Not soldiers, not machines, something in between. Tall figures in black armor walked in formations. But between them crawled other shapes, twitching, animal-like, made of fused metal and bone. Creatures built for war. One of them looked like the thing that chased her on the first day, but bigger, upgraded. Nyla's hands tightened around the knife he had given her. She didn't know what those monsters were, but she knew they weren't here for exploration. And they weren't here for peace. Grant knelt and pulled out the battered hologram disc again. He tapped it, rewinding fragments of old transmission static, broken words, fragments of command signals in English she couldn't understand. But she saw one image flicker clearly, a transmission log, a team of humans, 5 of them standing beside what looked like a lab module. They were smiling, laughing even. One held a small alien creature, her species, younger, not her, but close. Then the log skipped, and the next image showed the camp in flames. Nyla's throat tightened. Grant didn't speak, but she could see the fire in his eyes. This wasn't just about survival. This was personal. They moved again, slower this time, more careful. The air near the tower felt different, like it was charged with something unnatural. Birds didn't sing here. Insects didn't chirp. Even the trees seemed to hold their breath. As they walked, they came across signs, ruins of other pods, burned out, crash sites, bones, some fresh, some bleached. One still wore a half-melted helmet. Nyla swallowed hard. Her people had been here. Others to. And they didn't all make it. They reached a down shuttle, part of it buried in the earth, the rest torn open like paper. Inside was a beacon, half broken, but still blinking faintly. Grant inspected it, his fingers brushing over the console. It still had power. He looked at Nyla and pointed. "Rescue," he said. Then shook his head. Trap. She understood. Someone was still sending out rescue signals, but not to help. To draw in survivors. To collect them. She took a step back, eyes wide. That's when the sound returned. That awful, screeching howl. It cut through the trees like a blade. Grant's head snapped up. He spun, weapon ready. Nyla pressed herself against the side of the shuttle. Peering through a crack in the hull, she saw them. Not the armored soldiers this time, but something worse. Creatures crawling low to the ground, shaped like panthers, but made of shifting metal and flesh. Their eyes glowed red. Their claws sparked where they touched stone. They were sniffing. Hunting. Grant grabbed Nyla's hand and pulled her gently through the wreckage toward the back. There was a maintenance shaft half collapsed, but passable for someone her size. He pointed. She hesitated, then nodded. She crawled in. The space was tight, filled with smoke and the smell of burned wires. Sparks still popped from damaged panels. Behind her, she heard Grant engaging his rifle. The sound of the shot echoed like thunder. Then another, and another. Screeches followed sharp. Animal, pained, she crawled faster. Hands raw against metal. The shaft opened into a side hatch covered in vines. She shoved them aside, falling out into a shallow trench behind the wreckage. Grant appeared seconds later, his armor smoking slightly. One of the beasts lay behind him, twitching. The others were gone, for now. He didn't wait. He grabbed her hand, and they ran again. They moved through the trees like shadows, ducking low, twisting through roots and brush until the scent of ash faded, and the jungle returned to its usual madness. They stopped only when they reached a stream. Grant dropped to one knee and drank from a filter straw, then handed it to her. She drank too slowly, carefully. The water tasted clean, cold. For a moment, they just breathed. No monsters. No towers, just the sound of the water, and the wind in the leaves. Nyla looked at him, and finally spoke. "Why help me?" Her voice was quiet, shaky. He didn't answer right away. Then, he tapped the photo chip in his pouch. The one with the old mission logs. The one with the image of the young alien girl, being held by his smiling squad mate. He pointed to her. Then to Nyla. Then tapped his chest. "Family," he said. She stared at him. Not with fear, not with doubt, but with something deeper. Something stronger. She nodded once, because now she understood. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was war, and they were in it together.